Okay, we are recording.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our next water issues seminar. And this morning we have Walter Atkins with us. He's from the Met Council, and he's going to be giving us an overview and background and some of the key milestones of the inflow and infiltration program that he has been working on for some years now, trying to separate clean water from sewer water from getting into our wastewater treatment plants. And he's also going to identify some of the next steps that the Met Council plans to take to continue reducing that infiltration of clean water into the wastewater system. Walter is the senior engineer for the Met Council Environmental Services, and he administers the ongoing inflow and infiltration program that provides goals and incentives to communities mitigating excessive I&I, as they call it, infiltration and intrusion. Walter is a registered professional engineer in Minnesota and a graduate of our own University of Minnesota. Walter, hey, great to have you here. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Mark, thank you very much for the introduction. Happy to be here. As discussed, I'm going to be discussing Met Council's Inflow and Infiltration program today. So let's get started. So what we've discovered from the Inflow and Infiltration program is we know that it is a long-term strategy that works. We have simple solutions, but unique strategies. There's key milestones and success indicators, and continued investment is important for us. We're going to review the decades of cooperative work, policy, investments, and challenges the region has faced in I&I abatement. All right, and what we found is mitigation is a key capital strategy for Met Council Environmental Services, or just ES Environmental Services. Essentially, this program has been a 20-year partnership between us and the region's 111 sewer communities. We've prevented billions of gallons of clear water from entering our 9 plants around the region, hundreds of millions of dollars of prevented capital expansion since we don't have to treat that clear water, and that's resulted in significant operating and debt service savings, not only for us, but all of the communities as well that contribute to the system. So we should probably cover a brief overview. We treat wastewater for 111 communities and townships with 2.8 million people in the Twin Cities metro area. We have 9 wastewater treatment plants and over 600 miles of interceptors. Some of these are as large as 14 feet in diameter, or as deep as 200 feet below the ground. Some of them are siphons below the rivers, while others pump, hundreds of millions of gallons across areas. That's a lot. Collectively, we treat about 250 millions of gallons per day on average, and we invest about 150 million a year in our capital program. So to give everyone a brief overview of inflow and infiltration, or I&I, it is the clear water that enters the wastewater collection system. This can enter through both private and public sources. Inflows things like stormwater cross connections, sump pumps, rain leaders. Infiltration comes in through root intrusions, broken joints, cracked pipes. It's a lot of fun, a lot of things that can go wrong. So, big timeline for how we got here. A major catalyst for today's program, though, was the 1987 July superstorm, where we had 16 inches of rain fall within a one-week period over the region. Excessive I&I in our Blue Lake Service District. This caused a failure in the river crossing between Eden Prairie and Shakopee. This resulted in a lot of untreated sewage to be discharged into the Minnesota River for about 30 days. Fixing river crossings is a really tough thing to do, especially when you got 16 inches of rain coming down on you. So the Metropolitan Waste Control Commission, which was the sewer aspect of Met Council at the time, we were able to negotiate with the EPA and commit to a regional I&I study. This resulted in them not issuing a consent decree. Now, in 1990, the Waste Control Commission completed a system evaluation, and they estimated that about 20% of the regional annual wastewater flow was from I&I. The final report, it identified two approaches to reduce excess I&I in the system. One being an incentive program where communities would be given financial incentives to pursue I&I mitigation in their own communities. And the second was disincentives, reflecting financial penalties such as surcharges. The commission at the time, they elected to implement an incentive program consisting of grants and loans. Now, between 93 and 2000, the council offered a series of grants and loans agreeable to help fund local I&I mitigation programs. In 2002, the council completed a study on the effect that excess I&I has on the regional system and its impact on the ability to provide service for growth. The findings were that if I&I was not addressed, there would be insufficient capacity to provide growth for most of the infrastructure that we had at the time. So the recommended approach was to nip it in the bud, address I&I at the source versus increasing system capacity. The first I&I task force was formed in 2004. It reaffirmed the approach that mitigating excess I&I at the source was the way to go, and we established a 5-year program at the time. It also identified a demand charge that would be applied to those communities that had not eliminated their excess I&I by 2013. So, let's try positive reinforcement at first, and if not, we might end up with some reason not to do that, some disincentives. Now, carrying on, the regional I&I program, as we know it, began in 2004 with work plans assigned to those communities that had measured excess I&I. We'll get to that in a second as how we determined that. Now, as a result of the October 2005 storm, 55 communities were assigned work plans. In 2009, we had a second task force formed. These task forces are filled with city engineers, public works directors, finance analysts, all kinds of folks to weigh in to address the pending demand charge program scheduled to start in 2013. No one wanted to get hit with those surcharges, and we wanted to figure out if there's any other way around that. So the recommendations from that task force was to defer any demand charge indefinitely. And the Water Resources Policy Plan, the 10-year cycle that we're always working on, we amended that to reflect that it is an ongoing mitigation program. We and our communities, we're just going to continue to work on I&I abatement. Now, we had an extremely wet winter and spring and a storm event in June 2014 that resulted in the assignment of work plans to 42 communities. If you're in the area, you probably heard about the sewage backups in homes and release of sewage in lakes and streams in a couple of the communities. It was kind of a mess. So recognizing the need to address I&I sources from private property as well, because a lot of the communities have been doing a great job, a third task force was formed. This further affirmed the need for a continued program, and it recommended the development of community tools and public education materials. This is not something that all the cities can take care of. They can't fix all of their inhabitants' pipes, it needs more than that. Everyone's got to work together here. So it also requested the council's assistance in advocating for funding sources for communities. And as we'll find out, has become largely successful, but we still find the need for it. So while the program continued in the interim, the realization grew that private property was largely untapped source of I&I. We wanted to find a way to address that, and we convened a task force again in 2023, just recently. We agreed that grants were needed for private homeowners and that those in the original I&I program would be eligible. And then so we also discussed equity criteria to help those homeowners. So again, the council's I&I program began, and the system started measuring system flow extensively in that manner in 2004, and the community responses to work plan assignments in 2007. From that point to 2016, we found regional population had grown by 10%. The average population had increased by 18%. However, wastewater flows had been reduced by about 8%, despite those other things increasing. I unfortunately don't have an updated graphic, but with more recent statistics, but we've seen the trend continue through today, with about from that time from 2005, about 15% population growth, 12% increase in precipitation, and a 5% flow decrease. And yes, there's a reduction in the wastewater flow due to water conservation efforts as well, but the peak flow reduction and capacity preservation in our system is largely due to the effect of the I&I program. So we'll get into some of those comparisons now. This table here is a comparison of two major storm events, one from 2005 and another from 2014. We saw increased precipitation, and of course, we had population increase in the interim as well, but we saw a reduction in peak flows and community exceedances. Now, peak hourly flow savings is really what drives capacity saving efforts in our collection system. And in comparison, we saw the precipitation amount increase by 62%, but our peak hourly flow was reduced by 12%. That reclaims space in our pipes that's held for future growth, and obviously it reduces our risk of overflow, limiting any potential exposure to people and the environment. Now, I'm sure you're seeing where this is going to go, but this graph shows annual precipitation versus temperature for Minnesota. We've got it centered on the average from 1895 to 1986 here. And as we're all familiar with the direction that the climate is heading, this graph highlights the years from 1987 through 2016 in red. Most lie above or to the right of the center, with the majority both above and right, indicating that we're experiencing warmer and wetter temperatures. More water outside means more water inside the pipes, unless we do something about it, hence furthering the need for us and our communities to combat inflow and infiltration. So let's talk about our program a little bit. Getting down to the basics, essentially we will assign I&I goals to our communities. This is an annual event. We have meters for all of our communities. Some of them we have, I don't know, 15 meters if they got a bunch of different meter sheds at all the flow boundaries before they go into the next community. You want to tabulate how much flow each community is generating so that, you can adequately bill them. So that's an ongoing effort. But we use that data as well to monitor I&I flows, peak flow exceedances as a result of wet weather events, so on and so forth. We'll assign work plans if a goal is exceeded. That's an annual event too. We'll look back on all the exceedances, and these work plans are assigned over the next 4 years for communities to perform I&I mitigation efforts in their communities. And then an ongoing effort is, we're reviewing the planned work that communities are submitting. We have a chance to provide feedback and say, hey, this whole new thing that you're building or something isn't going to be eligible, but of course you can repair that pipe that's causing all that clear water to come in, reviewing the credits, so on and so forth. So it's a cyclical thing that doesn't really change much throughout the year. But, depending on the year and how much extreme storms we're getting, that can really change the amount of exceedances that we're seeing. So let's get into some of these details. I think they're really interesting. So as part of our program, we are monitoring flows from each community in several different areas known as meter sheds, and we acknowledge that there's going to be a degree of natural variation in flow throughout the day, as well as an acceptable amount of clear water that gets in through system deficiencies. No system is 100% perfect. So this graph here is a common sight to the participants in our I&I program, and it's part of our peak flow exceedance letters that we send out with flow on the left in MGD and a reverse rainfall axis in inches on the right. The acceptable level of flow, which again varies by each meter shed by community, is that red dashed line at the top. That's the I&I goal, which represents a reasonable hourly peak flow. We develop one for every meter shed annually. This is an ongoing thing. Meter sheds change. We add people, we have growth coming in. The averages are changing from a drought year to a wet year. This is an ongoing program, so we have to modify that adequately so that it's fair. This goal is communicated to each community through an online portal each year, and it factors in average flows, growth, and allocation for some degree of imperfections. This graph particularly shows a meter's response to a wet weather event. You can see in black, the days preceding the rainfall event, which is that blue blip on the bottom right there. Flows are fluctuating around 12 million gallons per day. But as soon as that rain event occurs over just an inch in this case, the flow jumps to nearly 35 mgd, exceeding the goal and consuming valuable capacity in the conveyance system. If everyone's doing that, we're in big trouble. So we notify communities if their peak flow comes within 20% of that red line, just giving you a heads up. Typically within the month following the event, and that delay between that communication, that gives us time to, double check our data, ensure the meter was functioning correctly, things like that. Now, these work plans that we assign, when an exceedance occurs, communities are assigned a work plan over the following 4 years, and it's an amount that's proportional to the flow exceedance amount. That's, how much over they went than their I&I goal. Now, that is a dollar value that communities need to invest in applicable I&I abatement. Eligible expenses here can include, vented maintenance hole replacements, pipelining or sealing, flow monitoring to help narrow in those abatement efforts, etc. We can't write you off, a brand new lift station that you have planned already in your capital improvement program. But if you got a huge crack in your existing wet well, then fixing that part, could count. So the current program, it's set at nearly 560,000 gallons per MGD of exceedance. The original amount was created in, I think, the 2005 task force. Don't know how they came up with that. I haven't been able to find the information, but we've just been adjusting that for inflation since, so we've been sticking with it. But anyways, these exceedance events, they're verified by our metering and alarm staff at numerous levels. This can include, data review by a data analyst, physical stick checks in the meter vault from our operations staff. So you're going to see appeals and circumstances exist too. Not everything's at a clear cut. It's been numerous times a subcontractor has knocked off a maintenance hole in a floodplain. We'll see the exceedance. We'll call the public works director, the city engineer. We'll have some back and forth, but usually we'll be able to dial it in. But it can turn into a whole mystery sometimes. Anyways, oftentimes they'll be able to confirm that, yep, that's what happened. Something got knocked off. It's not the normal. We don't have huge, cracks everywhere. They'll get the cover put back on. We'll see those flows go back to normal. Problem solved. Those exceedances that we came up and sent to the community, those will get cleared and no work plans are going to be assigned. Now, we currently utilize an online platform called the ES Customer Portal. We use that for communication and submission of work plans, work plan credits, etc. Communities have been able to enter, work that they plan to do and have their eligible amounts automatically applied. It sums everything up in a neat manner. However, we'll be retiring that at the end of the year. So we're brainstorming on how to proceed here, and we're going to be soliciting feedback from our communities about the program and the portal, everything all together. So it's a big improvement for future, big opportunity for future improvements. Anyways, the result of our program, combined efforts. No one property owner, community, or regional organization can perform the upkeep and make the changes needed to keep inflow and infiltration at bay. Everyone has responsibility. It's a massive system. We got over 1 million connections. Just as an example, a cracked private lateral, the one going from your home into the street where it connects into your community's community system, a single one of those, can let in 3 gallons per minute during a storm event. if you've got some pooling water in your yard. So if just 1% of those private connections has that issue, that amounts to over 40 million gallons per day. And mind you, we do 250 million gallons per day on average. That extra 40 MGD just from 1%, just from the private system, that can be a big deal. Now factor in, the inundated vented maintenance holes, from our 111 communities that we treat, leftover storm cross connections, errant and illegal sump pump connections or roof leaders. I can go on 130-year-old 8-foot diameter pipes. Uh, these problems can really add up and cause some major issues. So it's kind of an ongoing struggle that we all need to look at to address. So let's take a look at some of those specific efforts that got us where we are today. Now, what I like to refer to as the Great Sewer Separation gave us our biggest leg up, and we'll cover some of that now. Now, today, our wastewater and our stormwater systems, they're conveyed in separate systems and treated in different ways. The wastewater is treated at the wastewater treatment facilities. Stormwater is treated according to best management practices, and it's available for infiltration where appropriate or reuse. It's kind of outside my wheelhouse, but it doesn't go to the plant. The initial construction of the combined sewers in our area began in basically the 1880s. Both stormwater and untreated wastewater, it was both conveyed to the river by a single stream. In the early 20s, we constructed our first separate storm sewers around the lakes and in newly developing areas. Now, in 1934, we began construction of our Metropolitan wastewater treatment plant, that you've heard as Metro in St. Paul, Minnesota. That began treating that combined flow in 1938. Now, by the 1960s, sewer separation had started in Minneapolis and St. Paul on a much larger scale in connection with infrastructure improvement projects. It's estimated that the two communities spent over $330 million in funds to build these separated sewers. In part, these projects were funded by state and federal funds. They really took advantage of that to apply it to, applicable infrastructure. And ultimately, these communities diverted some almost 5,000 acres of stormwater areas from the wastewater collection system. Now, again, from 86 to 1995, MPCA, cities, and Metro Waste Control Commission, we agreed on a CSO permit, or combined sewer overflow permit, with a 10-year sewer separation program, followed by 5 years of sewer system effectiveness evaluation. Now, how this is a huge thing is, several, and I would guess most large older cities in the country, they still have combined systems, and they're still facing the repercussions of those remaining in the form of frequent combined sewer overflows. You'll read about those in the news semi-frequently, and that is despite building multi-billion dollar tunnels. It hasn't 100% worked for any of them. Look that up. So let's start with a few of these communities, just for example. Yeah, a decade or so ago, environmental services, we analyzed some of these communities and what they were doing in their own things to understand the effectiveness of both public and private I&I mitigation. And the results show that reducing I&I at the source, as I've been repeating, often at homes and businesses, it's an effective way to reduce I&I with a great return on investment. Now, Minneapolis, for example, from 2004 to 2013, they were able to reduce peak I&I flows by 75%. For that community, reducing old rain leaders that carried water straight from the roof when it rained into the sewer was a key factor. They also have an extensive pavement management program, and they've reduced flows from sump pumps that were discharging to the sanitary sewer. Yep, straight from their basement into the sanitary. And yep, that's illegal. Got one more slide for Minneapolis because we've had a several year ongoing study with the city focusing on modeling our numerous interceptors throughout the city. Interceptors are the very large pipes that the big city pipes discharge into that Mecca Council owns. And they're some of the oldest in the region. These, along with those in the city of St. Paul, they were the original backbone of the command system to the Metro wastewater treatment system when that was built in the 1930s. Now, through collaboration, data sharing, extensive flow monitoring, modeling, we've been able to identify and prioritize several areas in the city that need I&I reduction and determine cost-effective improvements to the command system. This helps keep wastewater where it should be and allows for pipe capacity to be reserved for future growth. Let's briefly cover a couple others that we got here. So, City of Golden Valley, they had a point of sale program in 2007. That was in response to the I&I program as well. So, many of the aging service lines from the homes to the sewer city, they've been inspected and repaired or replaced. Doing so, it helped their peak I&I flows reduce by 28%, and it helped regain capacity needed for growth. Now, again, without reducing I&I, this could have led to more capacity needed with larger sewers in order to grow and spending much more than by reducing I&I from the existing system, nipping it in the bud. City of West St. Paul began an inspection and repair program in 2008, also in response to the I&I program. Through 2013, there was a 33% decrease in peak I&I flows. That decrease was realized during a time that the parcels shown here in green, they were inspected and they were repaired. There's been so much more work since then, shown in orange, and that was this graphic's a few years old too, so I'm sure they've added even more than that. Um, we're going to be running these in the future, keeping tabs on some of these communities and seeing what their return on investment was. So those inspections and repairs in green, they were partially aided by about $500,000 in grants administered through Met Council program. So again, all three of these communities that we mentioned, they've been able to access some grant funding as it was available to support these projects, but have also tapped into funds from ratepayers as well. Got to get money where you can to make those improvements. Guess we got one more city to speak about, St. Paul. We've got a private property demonstration project ongoing for the area near the west side, shown on the right. The initial results, they suggest a large reduction of peak flows in some sub-meter sheds. This is just a little snippet from the model. Modeled flows before the repairs are shown in red, jumping up to nearly 1,800 gallons per minute. And then post-rehab, modeled flows are less than 1,000 gallons per minute. So no official report yet, but yeah, we've got high hopes, and it looks like they're doing a good job. Now, you may be wondering how this funding works with a lot of those municipal projects, and surely ratepayers can't cover all that, right? Well, yes, you're entirely right. We've got the municipal I&I grant program. This is awarded funding through the state of Minnesota bonding bills. It's dependent on the years, but the last few years it's risen dramatically. So I'll show you in a second, which is great because the requested amounts every single year, it's always substantially more than what's available every single time. There's a great need for more funding in this area. And a private property I&I grant program, as mentioned in the 2023 task force. That's also a great need. So far, we've only done one, just piloted, and that was just with our own funds from the Met Council, as we realized that was a regional need, and hopefully results from that are going to, show people on top that we need funding for that as well, not just municipal. So we've successfully advocated for several $1 million in federal funding for municipal I&I grants. Each one of these dollars, though, it results in several more invested in our region. As these funds are generally matched and only the I&I eligible portion is covered. My recommendation is if you can get involved and advocate for infrastructure funding, it supports clean water and public health. Now, some of that eligible and non-eligible I&I work, we have some examples on the left here. We have only a percent eligible for different ones. These were decided as a group by one of the previous task forces with the idea that the percentage is proportional to the extent of the I&I abatement. So for example, sealing a joint, that's 100% there to keep the water from getting in. That's not going to really fix your pipe or anything like that. But with a pipe replacement or lining, there's a huge structural stability element added into that mix. So that's extending your assets. That's a lot more than crack sealing, and that's a lot more than I&I abatement. So that's kind of where we got at for the eligible for reimbursement amounts. Here is just kind of showing you a geographic spread. Most of the Seward communities, all those ones on the outskirts, they got their own treatment plants or they're on septic. But this is our 2025 eligible cities for the public I&I grant. I think it's 88 communities, but I'm not going to count that right now. It's based on those who have come within 20% of their I&I goals. That was that red dashed line on that graph that I showed earlier. And basically, that was just an easy way to indicate that there's a need for I&I reduction. If you're not getting up close to that, sure, you got some stuff to work on, but not as much as others here. And once you're on the list, you're never off the list. Some of these haven't had exceedances, since the very first time in 2005, but you're still eligible, recognizing that there's still a need for improvements. Now, also we got the 2026 private property I&I grant. Again, this was a pilot study. We used $1.5 million from our wastewater funds. And as a blanket, we were just going to cover 50% of eligible funds. However, there was an equity component that was prescribed by each city. They could develop their own equity component. If that was met, then up to 100% would be covered. Okay, so moving forward, so far we're going to continue the program as is. However, with the opportunity to improve our customer portal program, we're going to utilize that to also solicit feedback on some of the elements of our program itself from the communities, just to see how things are working out for them. So as always, we'll stay in communication with them, notifying them of peak flow exceedances, meter anomalies, strange lift station cycling that we're witnessing, etc. Our teams really do have great relationships with a lot of the city engineers and public works and people with boots on the ground. Other than that, we'll do what any other, you know, underground utility does when they're doing best, and we're going to stay out of the news. In this business, as fascinating as this field is, things are generally running best when your common inhabitant doesn't have to think about what's going on down there, and certainly shouldn't have to experience the unfortunate event when what they sent down there comes back up here. And that is the power of I&I abatement. And with that, I think that's all I have for you today, but I'll stick around for questions. Thank you very much for your interest in this. It's a really important thing that we got going on in the region. It's semi-unique, as I mentioned. All the other cities that have similar ages we do, or almost all of them, they still have huge combined systems. They've spent numerous billions of dollars on giant tunnels under the ground, not trying to nip it in the bud and get it at the source, but just trying to find storage for it. But uh, it hasn't worked out for them. So we're just going to keep trying to do what we're doing and get all of our communities and residents on board. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Walter. I'm not currently seeing any questions in the chat right now, but folks feel free to type those in there or raise your hand, unmute. Um, I'm sure we have plenty of minds thinking about things that could be interesting to chat about, because there was a lot of great information in there. I had a question while people are kind of mulling those over. You showed that kind of long list of municipalities around the metro that are eligible for these types of grants, and it sounds like these are kind of available to maybe replace or stand in place of like ratepayers' dollars. So are there things that residents of these municipalities should think about doing, reaching out to city council members? Are a lot of municipalities taking advantage of these grants?
Yeah, a lot of communities, they're definitely taking advantage of the grants. Again, every time that we come up with them, they get drained right away, and the amount requested is infinitely more than what we have available every single time. As a resident, like hopefully it doesn't happen to you, but at some point you're going to have a root intrusion on your private lateral, you're going to hire one of the people to come out and clean it, and then it's going to happen again in 2 years, and then again, and you're going to have to realize, oh, hey, I got a replace this. And I think average rates on fixing it is, I don't know, maybe $9,000 to $10,000. It's not cheap at all. And yeah, if that happens, reach out to your, I don't know, local council member or your public works, I don't know, whoever you can, bother them about it, because if you got all your residents bothering them about it, then it's going to get brought up at the big table, and then people are going to say, hey, there's a huge need for this. We can't be fixing everyone's $10,000 pipe, on our own, and a lot of the residents don't have the means to do it. No one's just got 10 grand sitting around just for that. So yeah, be vocal about it, and yeah, hopefully we'll be able to advocate for future funding. And as you've seen in the last few years, it's really been working. It's accelerated quite a bit and been more consistent. So hopefully this is you know every bonding bill, we're going to have a good amount set aside for this. That's the hope.
Awesome. Okay, Paula asked, what's one of the most interesting I&I mysteries you've been involved with?
Ooh, the most interesting, huh? Yeah, they get weird and they're ongoing. Okay, so this was one. There's a a big stream that we're all popular, or that's popular, that we're all familiar with, and you know, it's part of a huge community. So, at the end of the meter, we noticed a gigantic rise in the average daily flow. It wasn't just like a huge peak and then went down. It popped up and it stayed up. And we're frantically on the phone with Public Works, from those communities, saying like, "Hey, what's going on? We got to look for this. Like, what is happening? We have to solve this soon." Because like it's up there like tens of millions of gallons per day just going up there. And we were able to, investigate, who's doing anything wherever in the city that could result in this. And they found out that yeah, it was a maintenance hole cover that was basically under the creek, or like at a sub level than the creek. And one of the subcontractors that was working on a totally unrelated project or something, just like knocked it off and forgot to put it back on. And then like the creek rose and it submerged it, so you're not going to be able to like find it right away. I wish I knew the details on how they found that maintenance hole cover, but yeah, it was amazing. Just think about that. You got something that's, I don't know, three feet wide and just like a giant hole, and it's covered in a whole creek, that can flow into it. How are you going to find that? It was amazing. And that was just through everyone bothering everyone that had anything to do with anything that could have gotten into our system. So I don't know. There's a bunch on my list, and there are some still unsolved mysteries. There are certain smaller ones, and it's a small enough meter shed. It could be, I don't know, a couple hundred acres or something, and still every time that it rains, we see this huge peak. And we're still in communication with those communities and like the businesses in the area. And we suspect a bunch of stuff, but we still haven't been able to solve it. So it's always an ongoing program. And yeah, you're kind of like a mystery person, just talking to everyone that you can. You're looking for clues. You can tell a lot from the data too. Like if you look at the point from when it rains to the amount that it peaks, you can figure out like how far away from the meter it might be. And then like the type of peak, like if it's just like a big thing that comes up and then comes back down right away, versus it goes up and then it stays elevated for a while, that can all give you clues on like what kind of, inflow or infiltration that's happening. So you can kind of narrow in your search. So yeah, there's a lot of fun efforts to keep this stuff out of the wastewater system.
Thanks for that. A lot of chatter about our lovely clay pipes that we have in the city. Are you suggesting the vitrified clay pipe that makes up my line isn't going to last forever? Says Michael. And then, Lauren asked, as you remove cleaner water from the system, do you find there are any new contaminants that you have to start treating for because they aren't being diluted to lower concentrations anymore?
Nothing new has emerged as the result of that dilution. Like that's implying that there's a certain contaminant that was like below, a level of con detection or something just because we had so much clear water above it. And then once we take that out, it's magically going to pop up above that little thing. But no, that would maybe be the case if it was just like going from, I don't know, our cross connection past, when we're treating who knows how many millions of gallons per day to what we're doing now. But nowadays, we're pretty steady on the average, and it's only during wet weather events, things like snowmelt too, where we'll see big elevated amounts. But the majority of the year, we're seeing the amount of flow that's coming in, and a lot of that is just straight sanitary. When we were going through the whole drought of what 2021, 2022, things like that, we were seeing just like straight sanitary flow because there wasn't any extraneous water to be getting into our system. So no, I don't think that that taking away that dilution factor has resulted in any new contaminants.
And related to that, Kyle asked, lower flow results in higher H2S issues?
That's a little outside of my wheelhouse. I'm not in the chemical engineering department too much anymore, but yeah, I could see that how you have, just more concentrated waste flowing through it and you don't have enough scouring effect, from a lot of clear water going in that could result in more of that. So yeah, I could see that being a potential. Not gonna tell you it's 100%, but that makes sense to me.
All right. Not currently seeing anything else in the chat. Typically, once I announce that and then start to wrap things up, someone comes up with a question. So
I
here's
have
the
one more
time.
for Walter here.
Perfect.
Walter, it's
Thanks,
Mark.
Mark.
So, what I'm seeing here is really a good news story. I mean, it's really exciting to me and good to see the progress that's been made in this area. And one of your slides, you said, staying out of the press is a great idea. And obviously, for bad news, I can understand that. I am wondering if you've been able, or the Met Council has been able to communicate to the public on the success of this program and why it matters and what a good news story it is.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if anyone subscribes to like Met Council newsletters, but I know we've had a couple over the years. Obviously, we're not good. I haven't done any big, newspapers or things like that. Like, hey, you're doing a great job doing what you should be doing, pat on the back stuff. But I think occasionally we've added a little highlight in our newsletter just to say, hey, we've spent a ton of money doing this and we've been able to advocate for a bunch of funding. Our communities have been doing a great job, big like group pat each other on the back. But, no big newsletters as far as I'm aware of.
Okay. Last call for questions. Otherwise, I think we might be able to wrap it up a little early on this lovely Thursday morning. This is, again, typically the time where someone slides one in the chat real fast, but I'm not seeing anything. So I'm going to go ahead and officially start wrapping this up. Thank you so much, Walter, for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time and your expertise on this extremely interesting subject that really affects a lot of us on this call. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the opportunity and thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.